You ever notice how people walk around pretending the world is fair? Pretending that life plays favorites, that justice moves on polite schedules, that everything wrong will be corrected neatly someday. They love that word someday. It keeps them calm, keeps them obedient, keeps them believing in stories that were never meant for them. But every now and then, something happens that rips that illusion apart. Something sharp, sudden, personal, something that reminds everyone that justice doesn't knock on the door wearing a halo. It doesn't arrive with choirs singing. It arrives like an unexpected visitor in the middle of the night, right when you thought you were safe. You ever notice how people spend their entire lives pretending the world bends to their will, pretending that consequences are optional, that life will accommodate their mistakes, that the rules are just suggestions meant for everyone else? They walk around with that smug little smile, thinking they've outsmarted reality itself, like they've figured out the secret to slipping past the hand that eventually writes the score. But here's the thing: justice doesn't ask for invitation. It doesn't please reply. It doesn't care if you're ready, if you're prepared, if you think you've got a plan. Justice shows up, and when it does, it doesn't knock politely. It crashes through the door with all the subtlety of a lightning strike, and suddenly, the world you've been playing with like a toy feels very, very heavy. You know what's fascinating? People act like justice is abstract, like it's a myth you tell children to keep them from misbehaving. They whisper about karma or fate or cosmic balance as if it exists somewhere far away, like a spectator in the back row of their life. But the truth is, justice is closer than you think. It's always watching, always waiting, always timing its arrival perfectly. And the people who think they're untouchable, they're the ones who get the first lesson, the ones who hear the knock loudest, because when the scales tip, it's not subtle, it's abrupt, it's dramatic, it's undeniable. And it doesn't care if you were busy, distracted, or arrogant. It doesn't care if you thought you'd escape the consequences of your choices. That's the beauty of it. That's the chaos of it, the poetry of inevitability. And yet, people still act shocked. They're stunned when what they've sown finally finds them. They try to bargain. They try to hide. They try to rationalize. They whisper excuses, explanations, apologies that come too late, too thin, too empty. Because the thing about justice is it's not negotiable. It doesn't need your permission. It doesn't care how clever you think you are, how long you've delayed, how many layers of deception you've draped over the truth. Eventually, all of it peels back. Every mask falls. Every lie bends and breaks under the pressure. Every attempt to control the narrative fails. Justice doesn't hurry. It doesn't linger. It simply comes, and when it does, you can't ignore it. 3 hours ago it reached her. Not gently. Not with ceremony. Not with a warning that she could easily sidestep. No, it arrived in the way that wakes up everyone in the room, in the way that makes people pay attention whether they want to or not. It arrived like a spotlight on a stage, exposing every corner of deceit, every shadow she thought she'd hidden behind, every move she believed was clever. And suddenly, all the control she thought she had evaporated. She learned, in a moment that's forever burned into the timeline of her life, that no one escapes reality, that no one escapes accountability, that the scales are patient but precise, and when they strike, the impact is inescapable. You see, this isn't about punishment. Oh no, people love to call it punishment, as if that frames it in a human context they can understand. But justice is more than punishment. Justice is the mirror that reflects the truth you've been avoiding. Justice is the echo of choices made long before anyone else noticed. Justice is the reminder that the universe doesn't forget, doesn't bend, doesn't lie. And the people who feel it first, the ones caught in the initial shockwave, they see the fragility of everything they assumed they could control. They see the consequences they refuse to acknowledge. They see themselves reflected in the ripple of inevitability that moves faster than any plan, sharper than any weapon, colder than any lie. And what's delicious about it, in a darkly ironic way, is how the world watches. Everyone else notices the shift. They feel the tremor even from a distance. They lean in, they whisper, they speculate. And that's the other truth. Justice has a public face, whether anyone admits it or not. Its effects ripple outward. People observe. People learn. People are reminded that nothing in life is as random as it seems, that every action leaves a mark, that every choice shapes the future, often in ways we pretend not to see. And when the scales finally move, when the measure is taken and the strike lands, the audience becomes acutely aware that balance has returned. And it did so on its own schedule, not ours. Did you ever notice how people act like consequences are something that can be postponed, like they're optional, like life will let you dodge them if you just keep running, keep hiding, keep pretending? They think if they whisper the right excuses, craft the right stories, or perform enough acts of decency to offset their misdeeds, the scales will tip in their favor. It's hilarious, isn't it? The arrogance, the confidence, the way they strut through life thinking that time or luck or cleverness will protect them. But here's the brutal truth. Consequences don't negotiate. They don't bargain. They don't check your schedule or consider your excuses. They arrive. And when they do, it doesn't matter how prepared you think you are. And people always act so surprised. They pretend that the moment they're confronted by what they tried to avoid is somehow unfair, that it came out of nowhere. But consequences are never sudden. They're patient. They wait. They build. They gather momentum quietly while you're busy thinking you're untouchable. You see, the world doesn't forget. The universe doesn't misplace its notes. Every act, every choice, every lie, every betrayal, every injustice leaves a mark. Some people fool themselves into believing those marks disappear, that they're invisible, that no one will ever notice the trail they've left. But time has a way of drawing maps, and the footprints you think you've erased remain visible to the eyes that care to look. 3 hours ago, she found out just how precise those footprints can be. Not gently, not with a polite warning, not with a soft tap on the shoulder. No, it arrived in full force, with the clarity and inevitability that makes people sit up and pay attention. Suddenly, the house of cards she thought she built was shaking violently. Suddenly, every little detail she ignored, every compromise she justified, every moment she deceived herself, it all became visible, undeniable, unavoidable. And isn't it fascinating, the way people scramble when the world reminds them that actions have consequences? The way pride collapses, excuses crumble, and reality steps in, uninvited and unrelenting, exposing everything that was supposed to remain hidden. People always talk about justice, don't they? But justice is just a word people use to make chaos sound clean. The truth is, it doesn't matter what you call it. Karma, consequence, accountability, balance, whatever label you attach to it. The effect is the same. The world corrects itself whether you're ready or not, and those who ignore it, dismiss it, or think they can outrun it, well, they're always the first to feel it. It's never subtle. It's never polite. It's a lesson delivered in real time, with stakes high enough to make everyone else watch. And watching, oh, people love to watch. They lean in, they whisper, they speculate, they judge, because the spectacle of someone's reckoning is irresistible. But it's not a spectacle, it's a reminder that nothing in life is arbitrary, that what you sow will always return to you, and that timing isn't random. And here's the cruel irony, the ones who feel the first strike of consequence never expected it. They never imagined that someone or something was paying attention. They were too busy believing that the system favored them, that their charm, cunning, or luck would shield them forever. They never considered that the scales don't care about excuses, don't respond to bargaining, don't delay for anyone's convenience. They just move, and when they move, the impact is undeniable. It hits with precision. It shakes everything. It leaves a trail of clarity in its wake. And suddenly, the world isn't a safe place for arrogance anymore. Suddenly, accountability isn't optional. Suddenly, the illusion of control is exposed for what it is, a fragile, temporary, meaningless construct. And yet, the rest of the world watches, observes, learns. Because consequences, once delivered, leave more than just the target changed. They leave the environment shifted. Everyone who witnesses it absorbs the lesson, whether they like it or not. The air becomes charged. Conversations are hushed. Judgments are whispered. Observers can feel the scale of balance restored, and a subtle, undeniable truth settles in. No one is beyond reach. No action is without effect. And nothing escapes the meticulous patience of the universe. You ever notice how people act like they're untouchable, like the consequences floating around them are some distant rumor, a story told to children, a myth whispered in the shadows that has nothing to do with them? They strut through life believing their cleverness, their charm, their timing will keep them safe, as if the universe itself owes them immunity. Oh, it's amusing to watch, really. The way they stack lies and excuses like bricks in a wall, thinking it will protect them. The way they smile, confident and blind, unaware that every misstep, every betrayal, every act of selfishness is being quietly cataloged, noted, and remembered. They don't see the build-up, the quiet accumulation of inevitability. They think it's luck. They think it's coincidence. They think they're clever, but it's patience, not chance. That's been stalking them all along. And isn't it ironic how shocked they are when the reckoning comes? When the quiet notes of life finally crescendo into a moment that cannot be ignored. That's the part they never anticipate. They never see the precision of timing, the meticulous nature of consequence. Because justice, true justice, doesn't operate on our terms. It doesn't wait for consent or prepare polite invitation. It doesn't care if you're ready, if you're busy, if you think you've covered all your tracks. It simply arrives. And when it does, it is absolute. It is indisputable. And it is terrifying to anyone who spent their life thinking the rules were flexible, that morality was optional, that consequences were for everyone else. 3 hours ago, she found out exactly how unforgiving that system can be. Not with a warning, not with a gentle tap, but with the weight and clarity that leave no room for denial. The moment cut through her layers of arrogance, pride, and ignorance, leaving everything exposed. Every manipulation, every half-truth. Every moment she believed she could cheat the balance came crashing into her reality. It was sudden, yes, but precise. Timing is never accidental with forces that measure, observe, and respond. They don't rush, they don't stumble, and they certainly don't miss. When it's your moment, you feel it immediately. And in that feeling, you realize something. The world is watching, whether you intended to be noticed or not. It's fascinating, watching people try to rationalize after the fact. They stumble for explanations, they offer excuses, they beg for mercy or understanding. They try to rewrite the story, smooth the edges of truth to make it palatable. But it doesn't work. The mechanism of balance isn't swayed by excuses. It doesn't pause for sentiment. It doesn't soften for charm. The scales move, precise and unwavering, and the echo of every past action resonates in the impact. That's why the first strike of consequence feels so violent, not because it is loud, necessarily, but because it's undeniable. It confronts the individual with the clarity of everything they ignored, avoided, or underestimated. And that confrontation cannot be hidden from the world. People notice. They observe. They lean in, whisper, speculate, because witnessing inevitability is irresistible. And in that observation, everyone learns the same lesson, whether they were involved or not. The irony is delicious. Those who believed they were untouchable are often the first to feel the full weight of reality. They believed in delay, in distraction, in the illusion of control. They thought patience or charm could extend their immunity indefinitely. But nothing extends immunity against a system designed to measure, remember, and respond. Timing is precise, awareness is meticulous, and in the end, no cleverness, no denial, no strategy can outrun it. Every act, every choice, every word left unexamined becomes a thread in a tapestry of accountability. And the moment it finally strikes, the tapestry unfolds, revealing the pattern that's been forming long before anyone realized. And while the individual suffers the immediate weight, the ripple spreads further. Observers feel it, consciously or not. The energy of consequence touches those nearby. The air changes, conversations shift, people lean in or step back. The atmosphere vibrates with understanding that nothing is as arbitrary as it seems. The actions carry echoes. that morality, deceit, and consequence are intertwined in ways that will always find their target. And that is the subtle brilliance of it. The system does not need to announce itself. It does not need applause. It does not need witnesses. Yet, everyone becomes a witness anyway, because the impact is undeniable, visible, and impossible to ignore. You ever notice how people live as if life owes them favors? As if the rules, the consequences, the balance of things somehow bend to their convenience. They move through the world with arrogance, thinking every misstep, every slight, every betrayal will slip by unnoticed, like some cosmic loophole has been granted exclusively to them. They smile, they charm, they manipulate, they convince themselves they're untouchable. And it's beautiful in a tragic kind of way, isn't it? Because all that confidence, all that swagger is built on illusions. Every word they've twisted, every corner they've cut, every injustice they've ignored, it doesn't vanish. It accumulates, it waits. And the universe, with a patience they cannot comprehend, remembers everything. You see, justice isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. No, it creeps, it calculates, it observes. It records each misdeed, each act of deceit, each betrayal. It keeps meticulous accounts while the world continues to hum, oblivious to the slow but steady gathering of inevitability. And oh, isn't it deliciously ironic how the very people who think they're beyond reach are often the first to feel the weight. They never see it coming. They never anticipate the precision. They believe timing is random. They believe consequences delayed. They believe the rules don't apply to them. But timing isn't random. Consequence isn't delayed forever. And the scales, the scales don't forget. 3 hours ago, she learned this truth in the most unavoidable way. Not subtly, not gently, not with any chance of evasion. The moment struck with clarity, precision, and undeniable force. Every lie she had relied on, every manipulation she thought would go unnoticed, every moment she deceived herself or others, it all converged in that instant. And the look of shock, the scramble, the sudden awareness that she could no longer escape reality. Oh, it's a spectacle, isn't it? And yet, it's not meant for show. It's meant for recognition. Recognition that the universe doesn't bend, doesn't negotiate, and doesn't forget. It's meant for understanding that nothing in life is truly hidden, that every act, every choice, every intention leaves a trace. And when the moment arrives, those traces align with the inevitability of balance. And people always react in the most predictable ways. They stammer. They stumble for explanation. They craft excuses that are too thin, too late, too weak to matter. They plead for understanding, beg for mercy, search desperately for loopholes that do not exist. And the beauty of it is that none of it works. Justice, real justice, is indifferent. It doesn't pause for charm or distraction. It doesn't soften for sentimentality. It doesn't flinch for fear. It simply arrives, and when it does, the world takes notice. And those who witness it, consciously or unconsciously, feel the ripple. They lean in. They whisper. They speculate. They measure their own lives against the spectacle of inevitability unfolding before them. And suddenly they understand something. They had avoided knowing the world has memory. And the consequences of inaction or malice are precise, unavoidable, and impartial. The timing is exquisite, not early, not late, but exactly when it is meant to strike. And the targets, often those who least expect it, feel it with full force. There's no preparation that can withstand it, no planning that can circumvent it, no arrogance that can deflect it. The mechanisms of cause and effect, the meticulous records of action and choice, the invisible ledger that watches every step. They do not falter, they do not waver, they do not err, and suddenly all the certainty a person clung to evaporates. The comfort of control, the illusion of immunity, the facade of superiority, it all crumbles under the weight of what cannot be avoided. And while she endures the immediate weight, the effect spreads outward. Everyone nearby feels it, senses it, reacts to it. The air shifts. Conversations are subdued. Observers lean closer, whisper, speculate, and measure their own behavior against what they see. The lesson travels faster than any words can, echoing in the minds of all who witness it. Actions have consequences. Deception has a price. Arrogance has a reckoning. And the subtle brilliance of it is that the system doesn't need witnesses, applause, or validation to function, but everyone becomes one anyway, because the inevitability of justice is unmistakable, precise, and impossible to ignore. You ever notice how people get comfortable pretending the rules don't apply to them? How they walk around thinking their cleverness, their charm, their ability to manipulate situations will keep them untouchable. It's funny, isn't it? The confidence, the arrogance, the belief that time or luck or distraction will shield them from the consequences of their actions. They stack lies like bricks, cover their tracks with careful steps, and smile at anyone who questions them. And while they do, the universe is quietly taking notes. Every small deception, every slight injustice, every betrayal is being recorded, cataloged, and remembered. It doesn't rush, doesn't panic, doesn't miscalculate. It waits, patient, precise, observant. And the people who believe they are beyond reach are the ones who get the first lesson, the first undeniable proof that nothing escapes consequence. 3 hours ago, she learned exactly what it means to be caught by the weight of reality. Not gradually, not with a warning, not with an opportunity to retreat or negotiate, but with precision. Every choice, every lie, every attempt to evade the natural balance of things came together in a single, undeniable moment. And suddenly the world she had believed she controlled was exposed for what? It was fragile, imperfect, entirely subject to forces she had ignored. And isn't it fascinating how people react when they are faced with undeniable truth? Panic, confusion, desperation. They scramble to explain, to justify, to rewrite history in ways that feel safer, kinder, less certain. They try to bargain with forces that don't negotiate, to reason with outcome, that don't need reasoning, to apologize for events that cannot be undone. But all of it is too late. Timing is precise. The system does not bend. The scales move, whether she's ready or not, whether anyone believes in them or not. And people always act shocked. They whisper about luck, chance, coincidences, cosmic misfortune, as if the universe is fallible, as if they are exceptions to its laws. But the truth is simple. The system doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't require witnesses. It doesn't demand understanding. It simply operates. It corrects. It balances. It delivers outcomes that have been building long before anyone realized. And the most beautiful part? The inevitability. The certainty, the way that every action, every slight, every act of avoidance or deception converges into a moment of clarity that cannot be denied. That is the poetry of consequence, the dark, ironic music that plays for those who thought they were immune. And it's not just the target who feels it. Oh no, the ripples spread outward. Everyone nearby senses the shift. Conversations change. Energy shifts. Observers lean in, whisper, speculate, and measure their own lives against the spectacle unfolding. The lesson travels faster than words. It lands on the minds of all who witness it, whether they were involved or not. A reminder that no one is exempt, that every choice matters, that every action has weight. And the one who is struck first, the one who feels the immediate impact, often feels it the strongest, because the timing is perfect, deliberate, precise. There is no escape, no loophole, no clever trick that can avoid the reality that arrives exactly when it must. And isn't it funny how people try to hide from it? How they seek distraction, comfort, illusions of control. They whisper, they rationalize, they pretend it doesn't exist. But it exists, always, patient, precise, observant, watching, waiting. And when the moment comes, when the scales finally tip, the weight lands exactly where it should. It's not punishment. It's recognition. Recognition of truth, of action, of choice. And in that recognition, the facade shatters. Masks fall, pretenses crumble, pride collapses, and the world around them shifts as everyone else watches, witnesses, learns, and remembers that nothing, absolutely nothing, escaped the quiet, inevitable power of consequence. You ever notice how people live in this illusion that life can be negotiated with, that the rules, the consequences, the scales of fairness can be bent, twisted, or delayed if you're clever enough, charming enough, careful enough? They walk around thinking the universe owes them favors, thinking their mistakes are minor, thinking their arrogance or lies or manipulations will never be touched by reality. Oh, it's beautiful in a dark, ironic way, the confidence, the sense of invincibility. They stack deception like bricks, hide their tracks with careful steps, and laugh at anyone who questions them. And while they do, the universe is quiet, watching, remembering, patient. Every small injustice, every ignored responsibility, every dishonest act is logged, recorded, cataloged in ways they will never anticipate. And the ones who believe they are untouchable, they are always the first to feel the full weight. 3 hours ago, she felt that weight, not subtly, not as a warning, not as a chance to retreat or bargain. No, it struck with precision, unyielding, absolute. Every choice, every lie, every act of evasion, every denial of truth collided in a single, undeniable moment. And suddenly the house of illusions she had built collapsed around her. Every manipulation, every half-truth, every carefully constructed lie was exposed, undeniable, unignorable. And isn't it fascinating the way people react in that moment? Panic, confusion, desperation. They scramble for explanations, for excuses, for ways to rewrite the past in a way that feels safer, softer, less accountable. They plead, they rationalize, they attempt to charm the consequences away, but none of it works. Timing is precise. The scales move when they must, whether she is ready or not, whether anyone believes in them or not. People always act shocked, don't they? They whisper about luck, chance, coincidence, divine mistake, as if the universe makes errors or they are somehow exempt. But the truth is brutal in its simplicity. The system doesn't need to justify itself. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need approval. It simply operates. It balances. It delivers outcomes that have been quietly building long before anyone noticed, long before anyone expected. And the most remarkable part, the inevitability, the absolute certainty. Every action, every deception, every betrayal, every ignored responsibility converges into a moment of undeniable clarity. That is the dark poetry of consequence, the kind of music that plays for those who believe themselves invincible. And it's not just the one struck who feels it. The ripples spread outward, touching everyone nearby. Observers notice. Conversations shift. Energy shifts. People lean in, whisper, speculate, measure their own actions against what they witness. The lesson spreads faster than any words, landing in minds and hearts alike. No one is beyond reach. No action is without consequence. No deception escapes observation. And the person struck first often feels it the most, because the timing is deliberate, precise, perfect. There is no loophole, no clever trick, no charm that can alter the course. Every choice matters. Every act has weight, and that weight lands exactly where it should, with no mercy, no negotiation, no reprieve. And isn't it exquisite, in a dark sense, how people try to run from it, how they seek distraction, comfort, illusions of safety, as if looking away can erase the truth. But truth exists, consequence exists, observation exists. They are patient, precise, and relentless, waiting, watching. And when the moment comes, when the scales tip, when the reckoning strikes, it is absolute. It is clarity. It is recognition, not punishment, not revenge, not theatrics, but acknowledgement. Recognition of choices, recognition of responsibility, recognition of the truth that cannot be avoided. And in that recognition, masks crumble, pride collapses, deception falls away, leaving only the reality of what has been done and what must be faced, while the world always watches, observes, and remembers. You ever notice how people act like they're invisible to the consequences of their action, like the world, the universe, reality itself will bend to their whims, their cleverness, their timing. They walk around thinking their lies, their manipulations, their arrogance are somehow immune to the natural order of things. And it's beautiful, isn't it, in a bitter, dark way, watching the confidence, the smugness, the belief that the rules don't apply to them. They smile at the world, charm it, convince themselves it's all under control, that nothing will touch them. And while they do, the universe is quiet, patient, observant. Every deception, every betrayal, every act of selfishness is logged, remembered, cataloged. It doesn't rush. It doesn't stumble. It doesn't err. And when the moment comes, the people who believed they were untouchable are always the first to feel it. 3 hours ago, she felt it. Not gently, not as a warning, not as a chance to hide or escape, but with precision, absolute clarity, unavoidable. Every choice, every lie, every small act of avoidance and self-deception collided into a single, undeniable moment. And suddenly the world she thought she controlled fell apart. Every manipulation, every half-truth, every careful construction of deceit was exposed. And isn't it fascinating the way people react in that instant? Panic, confusion, desperation. They scramble for explanations, for excuses, for ways to rewrite history, for ways to convince themselves that none of this could possibly be happening. They plead. They rationalize. They try to charm, to distract, to negotiate with forces that do not negotiate. And it doesn't work. Timing is precise. The scales move when they must, whether she is ready or not. Whether anyone believes in them or not. People always act surprised, don't they? Whisper about luck, coincidence, divine error, as if the universe makes mistakes, or they are exceptions. But the truth is simple, brutal, and inevitable. The system doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't pause for your comfort. It simply operates. It balances. It delivers outcomes that have been quietly accumulating long before anyone noticed, long before anyone expected. And the most delicious part, the inevitability, the certainty. Every act, every lie, every betrayal, every evasion converges into a moment of undeniable clarity. That is the dark poetry of consequence, the music that plays for those who believe themselves untouchable, the precision that humbles even the most arrogant. And it's not just the person caught who feels the impact. The ripples spread outward, touching everyone nearby. Observers notice. Conversations shift. Energy shifts. People lean in, whisper, speculate, measure their own actions against what they witness. The lesson travels faster than any words, landing in minds and hearts alike. No one is beyond reach. No action is without effect. No deception goes unnoticed. The person struck first often feels it the most, because the timing is deliberate, precise, perfect. There is no loophole, no clever trick, no charm that can alter the course. Every choice matters. Every act carries weight, and that weight lands exactly where it should, with no mercy, no negotiation, no reprieve. And isn't it delicious, in a dark sense, the way people try to run from it? They seek distraction, comfort, illusions of control, thinking that looking away or pretending it isn't real will erase the impact. But it exists. Truth exists. Consequence exists. Observation exists. They are patient, precise, relentless, waiting, watching. And when the moment comes, when the scales tip, when the reckoning strikes, it is absolute, not punishment, not revenge, not theatrics, recognition. Recognition of choices, recognition of responsibility, recognition of truth that cannot be ignored. Masks crumble, pride collapses, deception falls away. Reality asserts itself. And the world watches, always watching, taking note, remembering. You ever notice how warnings always sound harmless until they're not? People hear a time, a rule, a line they shouldn't cross, and they laugh it off like it's some bedtime story meant to scare children. But then there's that kind of warning, the one that doesn't come from fear or superstition, but from something colder, sharper, something that knows more than you do. And when the message is clear open before 11:55 p.m., suddenly the clock becomes a living thing. Every second feels heavier. Every tick sounds louder. The whole world leans in, waiting to see if you hesitate. Because hesitation has a cost, and timing is the one thing you can't negotiate with. It's funny, really, how people ignore the quiet signs, the soft nudges, the subtle pull, until they realize they're not suggestions, they're instructions. And when the night starts closing in, when the air grows tighter, when the hour creeps toward that line, you understand it wasn't a warning to scare you. It was a warning to save you. Warnings feel harmless until the clock starts tightening around your choices. People treat warnings like decoration, like background noise, like the little signs on the wall nobody reads until something goes wrong. They shrug, they laugh, they think, what's the worst that could happen? And then the clock starts moving in a way they can't ignore. Not faster, no. Clocks don't need to move faster to scare you. They just need to keep moving, steady, inevitable. Every tick a reminder that you aren't in control, no matter how much you pretend to be. It's funny how time does that, how it turns from something gentle into something sharp. During the day, the hours feel soft, harmless, like you've got all the time in the world. But as the night falls and the deadline approaches, time becomes a predator. It watches. It waits. It tightens around your mind like a pair of hands you can't pry off. That's when the warning stops being a suggestion. It becomes a command. And people understand what they should have understood from the start. Warnings aren't given to amuse you. They're given because something knows what happens if you ignore them. Something you're not ready to face. Most people never realize this until it's too late. They think they can delay, negotiate, play with the moment, test the limits just to see how far they can stretch their luck. They love flirting with consequences because consequences don't shout. They whisper. They creep. They give you enough space to believe you got away with it. And that's the trap. The silence before the punishment. The quiet before the clock takes what you refuse to respect. Once that clock starts closing in on 11:55 p.m., everything changes. The air feels different. Your thoughts get louder. Your instincts start clawing at your ribs, telling you to move, to act, to stop pretending you're safe. But by then, for some people, it's already too late. The truth is, people think they're immune to urgency until urgency has them by the throat. They think warnings are for the weak, the paranoid, the overly cautious. They think they're too clever to be caught, too strong to be shaken, too aware to be surprised. But the clock humbles everybody. Time doesn't care how brave you are. It doesn't care how smart you think you are. It doesn't bend for confidence. It doesn't pause for arrogance. It only keeps moving, pushing you closer to the moment you'll either obey the warning or face the consequences of your pride. And the consequences aren't always loud. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they look like missed opportunities, broken timing, doors that were once open but now stand cold and locked. And the worst part, those doors don't slam shut right away. No, they close slowly, deliberately, letting you watch, letting you hope, letting you realize the exact second you ran out of time. People don't fear missing out because they lost something. They fear missing out because deep down, they know they were warned, just didn't listen. There's a strange kind of beauty in how the last minutes feel. The world gets still. Your breathing gets shallow. You feel every second like it's being carved into your skin. And for once in your life, you pay attention. You hear the ticking. You feel the warning. You taste the urgency that was there from the very beginning. The same urgency you left off. The same urgency that now stands inches from your face, grinning at your realization. Because warnings aren't about fear. They're about timing. And timing is the one thing humans always underestimate until it's slipping right through their fingers. You can almost see it in that final stretch before the clock hits the forbidden hour. People start moving differently. Their steps get quicker. Their minds get louder. Their excuses start crumbling. Suddenly, the warning they ignored feels like the most important thing in the world. Suddenly, they understand what it meant. Suddenly, the clock isn't just a tool, it's a judge. And the whole time, it was there, waiting to see if you'd move when you were told to move, open when you were told to open, act when you were told to act. Warnings only feel harmless to the ones who think time is their friend. But time doesn't make friends. Time makes choices, and it exposes yours the moment you hear that warning. Something inside you already knows it's serious. That's why it lingers in your mind. That's why you feel a chill in your spine. That's why the clock suddenly becomes the loudest thing in the room. Because the warning wasn't supposed to scare you. It was supposed to save you. And the closer it gets to 11:55 p.m., the clearer that truth becomes. People always talk about pressure like it's an enemy, something to fight, something to avoid. They treat it like a monster hiding in the corner of the room, waiting to jump out and tear them apart. But pressure doesn't have to chase you. It sits on your shoulders quietly, patiently, like a polite little ghost, tapping its fingers while you pretend you don't feel it. That's the funny part. Humans pretend they're calm, even when the world is squeezing them from every angle. They smile with their teeth, but their eyes twitch just a little. Pressure exposes the truth better than honesty ever could. You want to know what someone really is? Don't give them freedom. Give them a deadline. Give them a decision that actually matters. Give them a moment where stalling isn't an option, and see how fast their facade cracks. People love to say they work best under pressure, as if it's some talent, some heroic trait, a badge of honor. But most of them crumble at the first real taste of it, not because they're weak, no, but because pressure is intimate. It gets under the skin. It sits inside the brain and whispers all the things you've been avoiding. All those tiny doubts you buried, pressure digs them up and arranges them neatly in front of you, like a collection of knives laid on a velvet cloth. And you're supposed to pick one. That's what terrifies people, the choices they can't run from. The world teaches people to hide, to pretend, to delay. But pressure removes hiding places. It shines a light so bright that every flaw you thought you tucked away becomes visible. You can almost feel the heat of it, like a spotlight on a stage you never auditioned for. And everyone is watching, or at least it feels that way. That's the power of pressure. It turns your imagination into your own worst interrogator. It doesn't need to hurt you physically. It just needs to make you believe everyone sees your trembling hands, your shaking voice, your collapsing confidence. Pressure doesn't break bones. It breaks illusions. What's interesting is how differently people react when that weight starts closing in. Some panic, sprinting in every direction like frightened animals. Some freeze completely, locked in place by the fear of choosing wrong. Some get angry, shouting at the world, blaming every shadow for the storm they walked into themselves. And then there are the rare ones, the ones who laugh. The ones who understand that pressure isn't punishment, it's revelation. It shows you what was always inside you, hidden beneath convenience and excuses. You can't fake your way through pressure. You either adapt or you fracture. But the real magic happens in the moments just before someone breaks. That thin, sharp line between control and collapse. You can almost hear their heartbeat booming in their ears. You can see them doing the math in their mind. Too many numbers, not enough time. You can taste the tension in the air, thick and metallic like blood. That's when people show their true nature. Not when everything is calm and padded with comfort, but in those trembling, suffocating seconds when they don't have the luxury of pretending. Pressure strips away the costume. It rips the mask clean off. And what's left is the real face. Sometimes the pressure doesn't even come from outside. Sometimes it's the voice inside their head. The one that remembers every failure, every mistake, every abandoned attempt. The one that never forgets. You can silence other people, but you can't silence yourself. And when pressure wakes that voice up, it becomes the loudest sound in the world. That's when the spiral begins, that slow, dizzying descent where every thought becomes heavier, darker, sharper. People think pressure is about external expectations, but the truth is simpler. Pressure is you fighting yourself in a locked room. No windows, no exit, nowhere to hide from the version of you that knows exactly where to stab. And yet, something beautiful happens to those who lean into it. When you stop resisting, the pressure changes shape. It becomes fuel. It becomes clarity. The same weight that crushed you yesterday becomes the thing that sharpens you today. You start to see the world differently. Edges become clear. Noise becomes manageable. Choices become simpler. Pressure can destroy, yes, but it can also refine. Diamonds aren't created in comfort. They're created in the exact kind of suffocation most people run from. But the majority will never realize that. They'll keep blaming the pressure instead of seeing what it's trying to show them. They'll tremble at the weight rather than letting it carve them into something sharper. They'll keep pretending they're fine until the walls finally close in. Because pressure has patience. It waits for you to stop lying to yourself. And eventually, everyone does. People crave validation like it's oxygen. They wander through life clutching their insecurities like tiny, trembling pets, hoping someone will pet them, praise them, whisper, "You're doing great." And when they don't hear it, the panic that sets in. The spiraling thoughts. The sudden worry that maybe they're invisible after all, that their efforts go unnoticed, that their presence doesn't leave the impact they thought it did. Everyone wants to matter, but no one wants to admit how desperately they need someone else to confirm it. It's almost funny how fragile people become the moment silence replaces applause. But the truth is, most people don't get validation because they haven't created anything undeniable. They try to impress with half-formed plans, quarter-baked dreams, and the loud insistence that they deserve recognition. Recognition from who? From a world that barely keeps track of its own disasters? From people who are drowning in their own problems? People think they are owed attention simply because they want it. But the world doesn't work like that. Attention is a currency, and it is never given freely. It is earned, squeezed out, pulled from the reluctant eyes of others through undeniable impact. You can't beg for validation. You have to make ignoring you impossible. And the fascinating thing is how someone's entire identity begins to crumble when they don't receive the praise they expect. Suddenly, they question everything they do. Should they change? Should they shrink? Should they reinvent themselves to something safer, smaller, more palatable? People shapeshift not out of authenticity, but out of fear of not being liked, fear of not being impressive, fear of not being remembered. And the moment fear becomes the sculptor, the result is always the same. They become hollow, a shell built out of other people's preferences, other people's expectations, other people's opinions. They don't live, they perform. And nothing is more fragile than a life lived on a stage built by strangers. What's even more interesting is how quickly people forget that validation is fickle. One moment, everyone cheers for you, and the next, they turn away like you never existed. You can pour your heart into something, bleed effort into the ground, and still the applause fades. People aren't consistent. Their attention spans flicker like cheap lights, one surge, then darkness. So relying on them to define your worth is like building a house out of smoke. You reach for it, and your hands close around nothing. But humans keep trying because the illusion feels good. And illusions, when believed deeply enough, can control an entire life. Some people even bend the truth to get validation. They exaggerate, embellish, fabricate. They turn minor achievements into grand spectacles. They twist failures into dramatic tales of resilience. Not because they're evil, but because they're starving. That hunger for approval drives them to paint themselves larger than life. And for a moment they feel full. For a moment, they think they've finally earned the admiration they've been chasing. But illusions collapse eventually, and when they do, the emptiness afterward is unbearable. Because when validation is built on lies, you need more lies to keep it alive. And one lie becomes 10, 10 becomes 100. And eventually you lose track of who you really are. But here's the secret people don't want to face: the validation they want from others is actually the validation they refuse to give themselves. They can't believe in their own worth, so they outsource the job to spectators. They hand strangers the power to define them. Imagine trusting the world with something so delicate. Imagine believing that other people, who can barely manage their own lives, should be responsible for determining yours. It's absurd. But that's the trap. The applause becomes a drug, and once you've tasted it, silence feels like withdrawal. So you chase louder crowds, bigger reactions, more dramatic displays of approval. What people never realize is that the hunger for validation reveals something raw. their fear of being ordinary, not forgotten, not dismissed ordinary. They want to be the exception, the miracle, the one name whispered in admiration. They want to stand out so badly that even their failures must be extraordinary. But the pursuit becomes a prison. They become obsessed with being seen instead of becoming someone worth seeing. They cling to every small compliment like it's a lifeline and crumble at every hint of criticism. And while they're busy begging the world to notice them, they forget the one truth they should cling to. Real validation doesn't arrive when you ask for it. It arrives when what you do becomes impossible to ignore. People love the idea of a spark. They romanticize it. This tiny flash that supposedly changes everything, like some poetic little flame dancing in the dark. But they forget what a spark really is. It's violent, sudden, unpredictable. It appears without warning and demands attention whether you're ready or not. And when that spark comes from you, when your presence becomes the thing that disturbs the quiet, people don't react with admiration like you might imagine. No, they flinch. They stare. They whisper. Because now you're not just another shadow blending in. You're the light that exposes everything around you. Most people go through life trying not to cause any disturbance. They move quietly, gently, like they're afraid of breaking the air itself. They're terrified of being the center of anything, terrified of the responsibility that comes with being noticed. So when someone steps into a space with purpose, real purpose, the kind that can be felt before it's seen, it unsettles them. They don't know how to handle that kind of energy. They can sense when someone isn't drifting through life like the rest of them. They can sense when someone's arrival means something is about to shift. And shifts frighten them. Your presence becomes a spark the moment you stop apologizing for existing. When you walk into a room not begging for permission but claiming your place. When your intentions stop being whispers inside your head and start becoming movements others can feel. That's when the air changes. That's when the quiet cracks. And nothing frightens comfortable people more than someone who disrupts the stillness they hide in. They cling to their routines like security blankets. And here you come, igniting everything without even trying. The amusing part is that you don't have to shout. You don't have to boast or wave your arms or announce your arrival. A spark doesn't do any of that. It just is. It exists with such intensity that everything around it reacts automatically. People who don't want change feel threatened. People who crave change feel awakened. People who fear their own potential either shrink away from you or cling to you like you're their last chance. You don't even have to touch them. Your presence rearranges their thoughts for them. And the reason your presence becomes that spark now, at this moment, is because you've reached a point where hiding costs more than stepping forward. There's a strange kind of pressure that builds inside a person when they've outgrown the version of themselves they've been pretending to be. You can feel it in your chest, like something is pushing from the inside, begging to break through. Most people suppress that until they suffocate under their own potential. But some finally let it crack open. And when it does, oh, the world feels it. People will try to deny it. They'll act like you haven't changed anything. They'll pretend they don't notice the shift, but their eyes give them away. Their behavior gives them away. They start paying attention to you without meaning to. They get defensive without understanding why. They question you, not because you're wrong, but because you suddenly make them aware of their own stagnation. Your spark doesn't just illuminate your path, it exposes theirs. And nothing is more uncomfortable than realizing you've been sleepwalking through your own life while someone else is waking up. The interesting part is how your spark forces others to choose. They either rise to the new standard you unintentionally set or sink into resentment. Some will be inspired. They'll watch you move with purpose and feel something inside themselves flicker. They may not admit it, but you'll remind them of who they could be. Others will feel threatened. They'll try to dim you, silence you, distract you. Anything to avoid facing the truth your presence reveals. But sparks, once lit, don't shrink because someone squints, they burn anyway. Your presence becomes a spark because you hold a kind of energy that doesn't need approval to exist. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's honest in a way that makes dishonesty uncomfortable. And people aren't used to that. They spend so much time putting on performances that when someone walks in without a mask, it feels like a disruption. They mistake authenticity for danger because they've lived too long in the safety of pretending. And here's the beautiful, twisted irony. You didn't ask to be the spark. You didn't beg for the role. But something bigger sensed the exact moment you were ready, and the world arranged itself accordingly. The air shifted because you entered it differently. The space reacted because you occupied it with intention instead of hesitation. The spark isn't something you create. It's something you become the moment you stop living small. People can feel the weight of something they don't understand long before the explanation arrives. It's almost instinctive. The way their eyes shift, the way their tone changes, the way they suddenly treat you like you're carrying something they can't quite name. They sense it before you say a word. And that's the strange thing about being chosen for something bigger. Others recognize the shift in you before you fully do. They feel the pressure around you, like the air thickens the moment you walk in. They don't know what's happening, but they know it involves you. And that's enough to make them uneasy. People notice when someone is suddenly set apart. Not because of fame, not because of noise, but because there's a certain tension that hangs around someone who's been marked by purpose, a seriousness, a gravity, like the universe is pulling on them more fiercely than it does on everyone else. And people, they're sharp enough to pick up on it, even if they pretend not to. They might not articulate it, but they feel the tug, the disturbance, the something. It's like watching clouds form before a storm. You don't need a forecast to know something's coming. And when people sense that your life is about to shift, their reactions reveal everything. Some lean in closer, hoping to ride the wave of your descent, hoping your spark lights theirs by accident. Some step back, terrified of the responsibility or change your presence brings. Some grow jealous, angry even, because you're carrying a calling they wished belonged to them. Others become oddly protective, as if they can feel the magnitude of what's about to fall onto your shoulders. You become a mirror for what they fear they'll never become. You can tell they feel the weight on you by the way they start speaking to you, with hesitation, curiosity, suspicion. Their questions get more pointed, their eyes linger a little longer, their demeanor shifts just slightly. They're studying you without wanting to look obvious, trying to decode what you're about to become because even they can sense it won't be ordinary. They don't need details. They feel the pressure radiating off you. Pressure has a way of leaking into the atmosphere around you, making the people nearby react even if they don't understand why. It's funny how people pretend they're unaffected. They shrug, act casual, pretend nothing's changed. But change announces itself in the energy you carry, not the words you speak. People feel more than they listen. They might not consciously admit that they're watching you more closely now, waiting for something to happen, something to unfold. But you'll see it in how they pause before answering you, how they notice your silence, how they react a little too quickly to the smallest shift in your mood. They're reading signals you didn't even realize you were sending. And some will try to test you. They'll push your buttons, poke at your confidence, challenge your decision, not because they doubt you, but because they fear how real this shift feels. They want reassurance that you're still the version of you they're comfortable with, that you haven't outgrown the boxes they placed you in. Because the moment someone senses your purpose rising, they get nervous. Purpose disrupts familiarity. And people cling to familiarity like it's the last piece of solid ground in a flooding room. Others will start retreating, not because they dislike you, but because they sense the intensity of what's about to unfold around you, and they're not equipped to handle it. People run from what they can't control. And nothing is more uncontrollable than someone stepping into a path that was written for them long before anyone else recognized it. It carries a momentum that sweeps anyone too close into its current. So some will step back to avoid getting caught in the shift, not out of malice, out of fear. And then there are the ones who become strangely supportive, almost overly so. They feel the magnitude of what's calling you, and they want to place themselves nearby, hoping to witness the transformation, maybe even be part of it. People love to be close to power, even if they don't understand its source. They want to say they saw you right before everything changed. It makes them feel significant by association. Even if they don't say it out loud, you'll feel their sudden interest, their unexpected generosity, their curious loyalty. The most interesting part is that none of them know exactly what's happening. They don't know what you've been called into. They don't know what message has been placed on your life or what urgency has wrapped itself around you, but they feel it. People always feel it. They feel when someone isn't walking the same path anymore. They feel when someone is being positioned for something heavy, something sharp, something important. They feel the pressure before you speak it, and their behavior shifts accordingly. And sooner or later, you realize something too. The reason they sense the weight is because the weight is real. People don't like urgency. It rattles them. It shakes the comfortable little worlds they've built out of routine and excuses. Most people want warnings to be gentle, patient, polite, like soft taps on the shoulder. But urgency, real urgency, it doesn't tap. It grabs. It pulls. It drags you out of whatever cozy illusion you've wrapped yourself in. And when something bigger than you starts tugging at your life, demanding movement now, not later, not when it's convenient, not when you feel ready, people freeze like deer caught in the glow of disaster. They don't realize urgency speaks its own language, and it only speaks when something can no longer afford to wait. There's a strange kind of electricity that fills the air when you're being called into action. You can feel it in your bones before you can explain it, like something is watching you, waiting to see how you respond. You sense the shift in the atmosphere, the tightening in your chest, the way your thoughts sharpen. And, deep down, that you're standing at a line you didn't draw. One side is where you've been. The other is where you're supposed to go. And urgency is the voice telling you the line won't stay open long. Most people ignore that voice. They distract themselves with noise, routine, entertainment, anything that lets them avoid feeling the pressure. They pretend they don't hear the call. They pretend it's not meant for them. They pretend time is unlimited, that the door will stay open forever. Humans are experts at delaying their own destiny. They convince themselves they'll act tomorrow, as if tomorrow is some obedient pet that always returns. But urgency is not a suggestion. It's a message, a warning, a countdown, and the timer doesn't pause for hesitation. The world is full of people who waited too long, people who felt the pull, sensed the moment, knew something was shifting, and still stayed seated. They underestimated the seriousness of the call. They thought they'd get another chance. They thought things would remain the same until they felt brave enough to act. But life doesn't operate on their comfort. Opportunity doesn't wait for courage. When something needs you, it needs you now. Not next week. Not when your schedule opens up. Not when fear loosens its grip. Now. And when urgency finds you, it won't always be wrapped in beauty or certainty. Sometimes it comes disguised as discomfort. Restlessness, anxiety, the feeling that everything around you is suddenly too small, the sense that you are being pushed into motion by invisible hands. It's unsettling because it feels like something has decided on your behalf, that waiting is no longer an option, and people hate losing control. They hate being moved by something they can't argue with. But urgency doesn't negotiate, it doesn't bargain. It demands. The fascinating part is how clearly the world reacts when urgency is on you. Situations shift, people behave differently, doors begin to unlock or slam shut without warning. You're forced to make decisions you've been avoiding for years. It's as if life rearranges itself to push you forward, whether you're ready or not. You start noticing signs everywhere, little nudges, strange coincidences, messages that feel too pointed to ignore. And for the first time, you see the truth. This isn't random. This is timing. And timing has teeth. People around you may not understand what's calling you, but they can sense the intensity. They'll tell you things like, slow down, don't rush, think it through, because they assume urgency is dangerous. But what's really dangerous is ignoring something that won't stop pulling at you. The world trains people to stay cautious, safe, predictable. Urgency shatters all of that. It forces you into motion with the kind of ferocity that terrifies the people who'd rather stay where they are. They don't understand why you suddenly act with purpose, why you don't hesitate anymore, why you seem driven by something they can't see. They're not supposed to understand. The call wasn't for them. And maybe that's what makes urgency so powerful. It isolates you, It focuses you. It strips away distractions and illusions until only the truth remains. You're needed. Not eventually. Not someday. Now. And that now becomes the drumbeat inside your chest. A rhythm you can't unhear. A command you can't disobey because you know in some unsettling way that delaying isn't just foolish, it's dangerous. The moment urgency wraps itself around your life, everything changes, not because you wanted it to, not because you planned for it, but because something larger decided the waiting period is over.